get the YouTube recording started. I never expected to be away for so long, if I'm being completely honest. I wanted a few months hiatus at the end of 2024 just to resettle my brain. And, well, that was November 2024, I think, for the... Yeah, the 5th of November 2024. Episode 87, Season 9, Episode 3. And then, obviously, I did one random episode last year for the show because they needed coverage on the schedule, and I had time and brain space. And I still... Chat, I've been burned out since November 2024, at the very latest. Probably burned out since before then. But I wanted to get back to you. I wanted to bring Rise of the Iron Tyrant back. I wanted to get this adventure finished so that you all can play it if you particularly want to punch Nazis and Robo T-Rexes. Whatever. Who doesn't want to do that? Quick reminder, I do not speak for Onyx Path, nor is this project official material. All views and opinions expressed are my own, and this material will be available to buy on the StoryPath Nexus. I am merely a grateful fan with a platform. Admittedly, yes, I'm also a freelancer for Onyx Path Publishing. I have some credits on the Trinity Continuum line. I know a little bit more about what I'm talking than perhaps most people, but that's the point of the show, right? It's to help people understand how to do what I do. I am disabled. I do experience muscle spasms that can affect the muscles of my jaw and throat, which can lead to a worsening of my normal stutter, a slurring of speech, and occasionally distressing and or discomforting muscle spasms. If it becomes too bad, I will just cut the show, or at least flip the camera down. Also, I'm now in a void because I got background removal because no one needs to see the room behind me. So I could probably actually just redo the overlay to get rid of the black box around my face. That'll be fine. Do it another time. I do also struggle with multiple trains of thought, so I'll try to finish one before jumping on to the next. If you raise a point, I will try to acknowledge it, finish what I'm talking about, and then loop back around to it. As ever, as always, I am Comrade Bubbles. It's right beneath my face, literally here. YouTube, obviously, if you're watching this, I apologize, but if you're watching this on Twitch, I am a freelance writer for Onyx Path Publishing. I have contributed to the Rose of Pugmire game line. My work for They Came From has yet to be released, and I have some Trinity Continuum credits. It's all good stuff. I really like what I do. I really like working for Onyx Path Publishing, and the community content is almost certainly how I got my foot in the door for freelance writing. So if you're interested in how to write for them yourself, hopefully this will help. Before we get started, the best place as ever to get the lowdown on what's happening with Onyx Path Publishing is the Monday meeting notes. After a year plus hiatus, I'm happy with them to refer to this as a season premiere. Technically, it's the continuation of the season, but I've written a lot more in the year since I last did this, so I'm definitely at a more experienced place in my career. Career in air quotes. So I'm happy to treat this as a new season. But regardless, it'll also tell you about what's going on, give you updates on crowdfunding campaigns. There currently is not one. And the schedule for the week now, congratulations, you've made it. Thursday, we've got at 4 p.m. Guiding the Path with Tom Moore. Tom is a fantastic storyteller, story guide. And Guiding the Path is kind of like this show, where I talk you through content creation and how to write content for Trinity Continuum games, and laser focuses it on running StoryPath Ultra games. So, kind of the same concept, but more specialized, and Tom is fantastic at what he does, and you should absolutely check that out if you have the time. If you're watching this on YouTube, you're on my channel, youtube.com/@ComradeBubbles. You'll need to be at youtube.com/@TheOnyxPath, I believe. I think that's where they're going up. I could be wrong. You should just subscribe to that channel anyway. And then, so that's at 4 p.m. Eastern. And at 9 p.m. Eastern, Scion the Veiled Society is a Scion actual play. I believe run by Crow. And Scion is always a good time. So I just need to blow my nose, so I'm going to mute the microphone. And then we shall get started in earnest. I apologize. I could feel a sneeze building, and I didn't want to sneeze on the camera, but equally, I had to deal with it. So, Trinity Continuum, Rise of the Iron Tyrant. Well, first of all, obviously, if you're new here, as it says next to my face, please do ask anything you can think of relating to playing or running Onyx Path role-playing games. Me writing content, and I realize my content's disappeared. There it is. On stream is just something to do while discussion is happening. Sorry, wind. By all means, ask away if you have anything you would like to check, clarify, get a vibe check for, whatever. Go for it. I'm here to provide what experience and help I can with your games and your, writing. But we are specifically creating an adventure for Trinity Continuum Adventure called Rise of the Iron Tyrant. Trinity Continuum Adventure, it has an exclamation mark, so you have to pronounce it, is a source book for the Trinity Continuum game line. So that means you will need Trinity Continuum and Core and Trinity Continuum Adventure. And Adventure is specifically around pulp action in kind of like the 30s. So basically, you've got your Indiana Jones is a big touch point. Any fiction that came out around that time, you've got dinosaurs, you've got Lost Worlds. That is nice fun, Aether. I'd say thank you for the resub, but I feel like you have a vested interest in resubbing to this channel. But thank you all the same. Congratulations on the nice number of subscription length. That threw me off. Yeah, so punching Nazis, dinosaurs, Lost Worlds, Terra Incognita, all of that good stuff. Moving out of steampunk tech because that's Trinity Continuum Ether. But you can still have, airships and things of that nature. So, Rise of the Iron Tyrant. Oh, no worries. It's not your fault I'm neurodivergent. Rise of the Iron Tyrant, we're all about punching Robo T-Rexes, being ridden by Nazi commanders. And for those who do not know, Tyrannosaurus Rex means Tyrant Lizard King. So, the Iron Tyrant, Robo T-Rex. It's not very clever. It's not very complicated. It was just a cool title. So far in this show, as anyone who's watched this season will realize, 8th of October 2024 it started, so you may need a refresher. I've discussed the importance of planning an outline, if that is your preferred method. I've discussed how to deal with scope creep. I've discussed some scene breakdowns. I didn't have any time to prep this, by the way, before the start of today's stream, so I'm just going straight into this, and I've written... Was this one whole scene? It was not one whole scene. Gosh dang it, I thought I'd finished the first scene. Oh hey, look at me providing page references. Look at that. That's helpful. So I'm just refreshing myself with what I've covered so far. Getting into the airship. Finding the Nazi spy. Oh, hang on. Wasn't there a... I did a fancy thing with the momentum pool, I believe. All actions of the first section of this soiree. Spy brings the Zeppelin down by detonating bomb premature, ending the current action, skipping to the crash. Was supposed to... Yes, that was it. So this whole thing was supposed to be 1,500 words because that was my self-imposed constraint to prevent scope creep. And as you can see, we're at 1,300. Kind of down the bottom left. I've turned the cursor off because I hate watching cursors move around on screen, if I'm being completely honest. But I will zoom in on the text of it. So I believe if I have 200 words left, that logically means that I am at the crash. Oh look, the bomb goes off when the characters reach this point, or all the characters fail the chase rolls. Yep. So cool. We're at the crash. I'm sure that me from 13 months ago had an idea for this. Me for now has no idea whatsoever. So let us simply continue by immediately hitting the wrong keyboard shortcut. Oh, it's going to be a good one today. The mob. I'm so back, chat. You don't understand how back I am. I was going to do some foreshadowing of, like, the bomb explodes with a thunderous roar, like an animal trapped in captivity. But I died. You know what? Let's go with, like, a confined... Let's go with poetry. Confined animal yearning to be free. Because it's, you know, kind of foreshadowing. It's also entirely pretentious, and therefore I'm here for it. Bomb explodes with a thunderous roar, like a confined animal yearning to be free. Fire and concussive force blast through. Have I been... I believe I've been calling it a blimp. Blimps and zeppelins, two actually different things. It's a zeppelin. Gotcha. That's not how you spell zeppelin. Hopefully the keyboard is not picking up the key... Why would the keyboard pick up the microphone, and why would that be a problem? Hopefully the microphone's not picking up the keystrokes. Yeah, Blaster a Zeppelin superstructure sending a violent quake throughout the decks. So I believe this doesn't assume characters are in the engine room. No. It's going to erupt from the ballroom as a high-pitched sorry, I thought I'd knock at the door. As a high-pitched whine pierces your eardrums. Now, let's leave the tinnitus off. As you regain your footing. Right. So the whole point of this subsection of the scene is that the Zeppelin is crashing, would you believe? This is one of those situations where the outcome is absolutely not in doubt. The players will always land on the ground. Gravity will see to that. But any dice rolls required within it are to see how poorly it goes for them. So I was just checking something. Because it doesn't... it does not assume they're in the engineering section, so that's fine. So they may or may not have the Nazi papers. Whatever. So this is purely getting the players from A, for atmosphere, to B for browned. That was... I'm so sorry. From A to B, you know, mid-air to the ground, and figuring out how to do that in a cool, thematic, and believable way. So those of you who do not know, whose entire introduction to Trinity Continuum Adventure was the very brief overview I gave about its vibe. Characters are larger than life. They have access to abilities that normal people do not, and so therefore can, to some extent at the very least, survive the crash of a Zeppelin. And obviously the hope is that they'll spend the time trying to survive, but also trying to help the party guests and the crew survive as much as possible, while also living up to the inspired... Hang on. I can't remember if I'm designing this for inspired characters. I assume I am. That's the default assumption. Doesn't say. We're just going to assume inspired. Why not? Oh, hang on. There was something there about the crash. No, never mind. Cool. Okay. So, it's going to interrupt the ballroom as you regain your footing. Where are the characters are on the Zeppelin. The urgency of the situation should be readily apparent. Metal screams as the superstructure contorts, spot fires burn around them in the wake of bomb blast and secondary damage to the Zeppelin, and both staff and guests are terrified. The Zeppelin immediately begins falling from the sky. Imposing a let's say level 1 complication. Oops. Complication to any rolls in the physical. I'm choosing to believe that the word is arena. So I was just scrolling through the rulebook and I was like, hey, I know that name. And then had to scroll back up to double check that it, was the name I thought I'd read. Turns out writers put themselves in these books. Who would have thunk it? That didn't help in the slightest. I'm pretty sure it's arena. Too many games in my head. Yeah, arena. I got there in the end. I was checking the wrong book. That's, on me. If not bought off, the character falls prone after completing the action they were attempting. Just trying to think. If there should be a worsening of this complication and an easy way to reflect that. So my idea, the thought being, as the Zeppelin crashes, the longer the crash happens, the longer the crash takes, the harder it is to stay upright, essentially. But I also noticed that I only have, 83 words left. So this cannot be a full subscene. This is more just a, hey, this is what happens. This is how the characters deal with it. If not, what if the character falls prone after completing the action they were attempting. Each character... suffers an injury condition. They get hurt in the process. Each character can attempt one action. Where they're helping the guests, fighting fires, etc. Before they must make a... Right. Difficulty probably 2. Nice middle of the road number. Athletics and I'd say any physical roll. Sorry, I just have to keep checking the syntax of roles. No matter how much you write for a game line, or how little, you'll always be checking that syntax. You'll always be doubting yourself, or at least I do. That's my experience. Before they must make a difficulty to athletics plus any physical attribute roll. Failing this roll means they begin, or failing this roll. Just trying to think how to phrase this in a way that makes sense. I guess just deals one injury. Deals with what? Deals one injury condition that. And now I need to word this properly because scene 2, as established in previous episodes of the show, is chronologically before scene 1. But these injury conditions need to persist into scene 3. So failing this roll deals one injury condition at the beginning of... so this is the Zeppelin, the jungle, I guess the base. Page XX. If not, what if the character falls prone to suffer injury condition? So I guess I'm going to need a disclaimer at the start of the scene too, saying that any injury conditions the characters are suffering are ignored for the duration of this scene. I guess that makes sense. So basic experience of the crash is just bit of narration, and then there's a roll to see how well you avoid damage. I've still got 25 words left in this chapter, so how can I improve this? How can I improve this while staying within scope? Because I've always felt it best to write with as much concision as possible to cover what I want to cover, and then build on that to hit the word count, rather than write oodles, go over the word count, and have to trim down. Now, obviously, it's not always possible to do that. Sometimes you do just naturally write over the count and have to edit ruthlessly. But here, I clearly have not. I need to clarify what this roll is actually for. Williams make it difficult to do athletics any physical attribute roll. To avoid major harm as the Zeppelin crashes into the rainforest. Okay, I've got 14 words left. I can do this. And again, I'm pretty sure I've said this before in this season. Don't feel like you have to be constrained to a 1,500 word count for a chapter. Just do whatever you want. I'm just doing 1,500 words because it's a decent amount of words to get a fair amount of stuff written in, and also on a good day, that's how many words I can write in one sitting. Obviously, this is an artificially extended process, etc., etc. I'm just rehashing our ground at this point. But 1,500 words for me is a sustainable writing pace for freelance contracts, and I cannot overstate the importance of finding what a sustainable writing pace is for you, should you wish to pursue freelance work or paid, formal employment as a writer for a tabletop company. Just trying to think if there's anything else I need to add to this final section before starting afresh with chapter 2. Or scene 2, or whatever you want to call it. I don't think so, but it's annoying that I've got 14 words left. I like hitting those nice round numbers. Although it does seem a bit tacked on at the end, I will admit. Oh, by the way, now I have to make a die roll. But there's stuff I'm thinking of that could just be at the start of the next chapter, at the start of chapter 3. Oh, right, they could probably do with the... character who rolls the... Is it degree of success, I want to say? Yeah. Go my brain. Character who rolls the greatest degree of success finds the briefcase of Nazi papers. This roll deals 1 injury condition at the beginning of chapter 3 of the base. And the character who rolls the greatest degree of success finds the briefcase of Nazi papers. Because that right there is a plot hook for future stories. And I may also revisit it in chapter 3. It might have useful information in. But for now, this is where it's found. And to cut things down to 1,500 words, just make things slightly more concise. Should be obvious. Mental screams is the superstructure got spot fire. And just fire spin around. There we go, 1,500 words. Boom. And then always remember to save. That is incredibly important. And if you are writing in a document with styles that have been provided for you, and you decide to use and you can't access the style document for whatever reason, so you're just using the template file and deleting all the text out of it and continuing, don't do what I did. Click Save As. Don't actually overwrite the document, because that is how you lose an entire chapter's worth of work. Learn from my mistakes, folks. Learn from my mistakes. Sorry, the chase. The crash. The jungle. However, I don't want to include. I don't want to include the chapter headings in my word count. So that's why everything is in heading 2 right now. Exploration. Chronologically, this scene, well, this chapter takes place before chapter 1. The Zeppelin. Any injury conditions sustained. And please bear with me while I check something. Any injury condition sustained, inspiration spent. and similar. Or similar. You know what, let's do this properly. Let's, Nope. Oh my gosh, chat. I just realized it's been the whole generative AI debacle since I last streamed. Hey, you can pry the M- out of my cold dead hands. I'm not giving that up just because it's a sure sign of generative AI writing. I'm writing this with my actual hands on my actual keyboard. And yes, I've memorized the alt code for the M-. What of it? Speaking of, however, if you are writing freelance for multiple companies, always worth checking their style guides to figure out if they like the spaced M-. Some companies prefer an M- without the spaces on either side of it. It's entirely up to the company and the style guide that they're using. I will always advocate that if you're writing community content for a game line, you should probably follow that game line style guide as closely as possible, just to make it feel as official a product as possible. And yeah, that's as far as I've got with that train of thought. You will also know I'm writing in UK English because I'm taking that mild luxury for myself that I don't have to either mentally correct myself or rely on a spell checker. During chapter 1 isn't resolved. It is simply ignored. Simply treated as if it never happened. This may result in characters spending inspiration that chronologically they shouldn't have. Who cares? It's a game. That's my personal feelings on the matter, but in a more professional note, seriously, as this is designed entirely to introduce people to a game, just call it out. Say, this is what happened, this would have had an effect, but the writer, i.e. me, made this decision. When this happens, point out that this is an intentional break with the rules and move on, because every time I write one of these adventures, I try to write it as if it's someone's first experience with the game system. So this is why I'm trying to provide page references now. I haven't done that in my older ones. I did that for my Trinity Continuum the word has gone. The word has gone. Game Jam. There it is. There was a Game Jam in 2024, I believe. And I mean, there was a jam last year as well, but specifically the jam in 2024 that I entered in and won. Woohoo, go me. I did a Trinity Continuum adventure called Begin Again for that, and the intention there was to introduce people to how to play Trinity Continuum, assuming no prior knowledge of the game. And I started putting page references in that, and then I was like, well, these are explicitly to introduce people to the game. Why not do that? And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the official quick starts. There really is not anything wrong with those with the quick starts. But some people don't know they exist, and they might have the rulebook already and just want to use it. And so this is just an alternative solution. And obviously, some people might play the quick start, get a feel for the game, but then also have people they want to play the game with, but they don't necessarily want to play the quick start again. So, redundancies are built in. There are official quick starts if you want to get going as quickly as possible, and then if you want to introduce people to the game but don't want to replay that, hey, buy my things. It helps a poor, queer, disabled nerd out. Anyway, back to this. So, TLDR, if you're going to break the rules in any content, my opinion, and your mileage may vary on this, my opinion is that you should point out where you've broken the rules, just so that people don't think that that's how the game works. Obviously, again, you don't have to do that. I try to be as transparent as I can when I'm GMing or story guiding, SGing, purely because I believe that if everyone is aware of what's happening on a mechanical level, that helps people make informed choices. And in my experience, at least, giving my players that respect has led to less confusion about the tabletop situation, what's happening in the story, and mechanically what's going on. And if people are spending less time trying to figure out where something jives with the rules and where it doesn't, especially if they've read the rulebook as well, one, you're just heading off conversations about, hey, that's not in the rules, and two, it just gives people more time to make poor in-character decisions. Feed me that drama. I need it. Point out this is intentionally broke with the rules and move on. So my idea for this section, if I recall correctly, if I'm just going to refer to my project outline. This is an investigation scene. It is a procedural scene. So I should probably make a note of that. How did I phrase it up here? Oh, right, yeah, I should probably also do the whole overview stuff. And then exploration actually happens down here, because this is all... Just realized you can't see my cursor. This is all introductory text to the scene itself. This is for GMs to get a grasp of what's happening. The characters find themselves in the middle of the rainforest. They're told that somewhere within the forest is a hidden Nazi base. And tasked with finding, knitting, if you will, are tasked with finding it, infiltrating it, and putting a stop to whatever they find within. Yes, I've got find twice in one sentence there. There's that well-known saying of, you can't edit a blank page. So just get things down, get words on the page. You can always edit it later. To make it good, you have to make it in the first place. Putting a stop to whatever they find within. Scene begins as a procedural scene. And that is covered. I keep going to the wrong tab. Sorry, I've got the rulebooks open in a browser window because I couldn't be bothered to deal with Adobe Acrobat. Page 81 through to 85. Side note, just love an unspaced end dash. It's very satisfying to use an end dash, and I cannot explain why. Begins as a procedural scene. The Characters will find clues pointing towards either something from the previous chapter or the plans. Say location of the hidden Nazi base and what is happening there. I think we could just say the scene. No, because there might be small combat. There might be a small combat, sorry. Because it's a procedural scene, the new characters will find clues pointing towards either the Zeppelin from the previous chapter or the location of the hidden Nazi base and what is happening there. Through a series of vignettes. There is no need to describe every journey, every step taken. Simply narrate the landmarks encountered along between the scenes below. Ask the players for input on anything that particularly grabs their characters' attention. So this last bit, I am always a fan of shared world building and storytelling with my players. So that's kind of partly that, but also it's introducing the idea that the players can have input's the wrong word. Impact is also the wrong word. But they can have a say on the narrative. One of the cool things about Trinity Continuum, if you're unfamiliar with it, is that inspired characters... Sorry. I think I'm okay. Have, as I said, abilities that normal people do not, and this can sometimes result in impacting the world. I'm trying to phrase this properly, in a non-incorrect manner. You know what? Let's just see if I can find the page. Oh, that's not referenced in the slightest. Oh dear. Unless I'm looking under the wrong thing. I might be looking under the wrong thing. I'm not looking under the wrong thing. As I flick through the PDF. I say flick through the PDF. You know what I mean. You can't flick through a PDF. That's why I don't like PDFs. I'm a very tactile person. But I will use a PDF because I recognize the strength of the PDF as an option. I also recognize optical character recognition, and I may have to use that if I can't find what I'm looking for very quickly. There it is. There we go. So, yes, I couldn't remember if it applied to all inspired or just one type of inspired. So there are three: Stalwarts, Mesmerists, and Daredevils. But it applies to all three. Inspired characters can engage in dramatic editing, which is they can spend a one or more inspiration, careful wording, to change the world around them, but for players who are not necessarily comfortable with having direct input on the scene itself or what's happening. That can be a terrifying proposition. Slight exaggeration, but they might shy away from it because it's something they're not comfortable doing. So it's just asking for input into, hey, what does your character notice as you travel? And or if a roll fails, ask them how the roll fails. Just giving them that bit of buy-in and power, authority over the narrative can make it slightly more comfortable when you get to a more mechanically baked in thing like dramatic editing. And dramatic editing itself, just for reference, where is it? Zoom in so I can actually read the PDF. Spend your inspiration. You can generate a plausible advantage within the scene, although it does still have to narratively make sense for it to be there. You can retcon events, casting them in a new light, revealing actions or preparations taken in flashback. You cannot override previously established facts, and the story guide always has veto over it, but it allows you to have a meaningful impact on the scene and take the story guide's position for like a few sentences. And it just also means that you don't have to prepare or plan everything in advance if you're doing heists or assaults or things of that nature. It just makes things streamlined and simple, and it means you don't have to overplan. And so, it can be a useful tool. But if people are discomforted by it, they're less likely to engage with it. And also, at least in my experience, my admittedly limited experience, less likely to remember it's a thing they can do. Because they're like, I don't want to do that, so it just gets pushed to one side. If it's ever explained at all, because, when you're trying to teach someone a game, there's a lot to go through. I know for Begin Again, I explicitly called out in the text, I believe, that it's not for characters who are inspired, or talents as they're called in Trinity Continuum, because I didn't want to overburden people in an introductory game. That's not to say you can't run the adventure for talented characters. Obviously you can. You might just have to tweak some things because talents are stronger than baseline characters. Aberrant language sneaking in there. So it's just something to be aware about, and why I, particularly in games with mechanics, options, what have you, for players to have an impact on what happens like this, rather than just reacting to the narrative. They have some say in shaping it in an active way. Not an active way, because they should always have an active way of shaping the narrative. That's the conversation between GM and players. In a mechanical way, that's better. It's useful to point it out and to give them practice beforehand. I think that all makes sense. Obviously, if you're watching this on YouTube, please let me know in the comment section if you want me to clarify anything. For the avoidance of doubt, I'm a GM who will always work with the players to tell the best story. I will allow their decisions to guide what happens, and I will do what I can to spotlight the cool things their characters can do and put them in situations that they want to be in, because that's just the best way to tell a cool story. It's our story, not my story. And I just want to make that painfully clear and overstate that point. Anyway, back to this. Anything that particularly grabs their character's attention. Explain that this is thematically similar to dramatic editing. Whoops. Dramatic editing, astonishingly, is not on pages 81 to 95 of Trinity Continuum Core. Also, all of the... I believe I'm using the revised rulebook from, like, the second printing. From the second print run, or, like, the most recent print run, or whatever you want to call it. 154 to 155. And Trinity Continuum. Continuum is my aberrant Nova. His name is Tim. He just stretches on in front and behind. Adventure! Word does not like me having an exclamation mark followed by a comma. But I'm in charge, Word. You can't make me stop. I do not know the alt code for an end dash, so I'm just going to copy paste it. Anyway, I've lost chat. No, that's not chat. There's chat. Hi, chat. I lost you. I don't know how much longer I'm going to be going for, by the way, folks. I know we're in like 50 minutes in to the recording. I was hoping to have time to prepare for today's stream yesterday, but things transpired to distract me, so I was unable to prepare fully. So I'm kind of just wing this as I go along. I don't know if you can tell. And I'm not 100% on how I want to handle the next section. But I have just noticed that I'm 200 words into the intro of this section, and I think that's roughly the same as it was up here. Yep, exactly the same, in fact. So I think that's the end of the intro section of the intro to chapter 2. Save the document, save your work. Just checking the time. That's all good. Right, so. How to go about this? Because I think I'm going to have like an exploration section which just covers the exploration mechanic, and maybe built upon in the appendix for more of a hex crawl situation. I don't know. I haven't fully decided. My project outline has hex crawl ? So I think splitting it up into exploration and then yeah, so outline the jungle, 200-word intro/outro. I've got that. Montage of travel and action bubbles and pieces encounter point of interest and learn something from it. 4 encounters at 200 words each of which contains 1 core clue and 1 alternative clue or additional information. Those are broken down. And then the final encounter that provides 1 core clue and additional information. $800 plus 500, 1,300. Yeah, okay, so let us just do it in that order, I guess. Sorry, I'm just looking at my outline and trying to figure out the best order to write things in for the purposes of chapter flow, because there is obviously you want your work to flow in a way that makes sense to the reader, not just to you. Not always easy, obviously, particularly if, like myself, when it comes to content creation, you're the one doing the writing, the editing, and the layout. But having an external pair of eyes on it can help. Or just taking your time when you're writing to really figure out the flow that you want the thing to have, or to take that step back from the work, take a look at it, at a higher level, and go, does this fundamentally make sense as a coherent piece of work? And sometimes it won't, and sometimes you'll have to tweak things, move things around, rewrite. Always sucks, but sometimes you have to, and sometimes it'll be fine, So, but you're saving time doing it now than doing it later in the process. This scene is a sequence of procedural vignettes. Whoop. Whoop. The characters find clues. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, so that's that. Bubbling Spring. So that gives you the title of the vignette, and then the read aloud text, which I think I've mentioned before on the show. I'm not a huge fan of it, but I know some people really like it as an aid, an accessibility thing to help them kind of get a feel for what's happening. And some people just want it, and that's totally fair. It's there for you to use as you wish, and if that is ignoring it, well, I literally cannot stop you. I've already written it, so I'm not going to reach through the text and, put a gun to your head. So we've got the title of the vignette, and then the narrative is kind of setting up the vignette. This is the... Hang on, I've got 2 extra words, right? I've got 1 word. Somewhere within the forest is not space task. Finding it, infiltrating it, finding. I think that would have to be finding and infiltrating it and putting a stop, or no, or just finding it, infiltrating it, and putting a stop to whatever they found within. This is seen as a sequence of procedural vignettes. Characters find clues pointing towards either the Zeppelin from the previous chapter, location of the hidden Nazi base, and what is happening there. By playing through the vignettes below in order. There we go. That's what I was trying to communicate. Contractions are your friend. I don't know why I don't write in them. Clearly I use contractions all the time when speaking. I don't tend to write with them, and I do not know why. I mean, when I'm speaking, I use it. As with most people, I will use the full phrase for emphasis. But when writing, I just forget the apostrophe exists. I need to describe every step taken, simply narrate the landmarks encountered between scenes below and ask the players for input on anything that grabs their character's attention. There we go. That's back to the 1700. Alright. Bubbling Spring. That's the wrong heading. There we go. In front of you is large and judging by the churned mud at its edges. Frequently used. Waters are cool and clear, and the sun high above glints off something small and metallic at the very bottom of the pool. Or at the bottom of the pool. The characters are in a large clearing surrounded by lush vegetation on all sides. The vehicles they used to get here, sorry. Are pulled to one side. The trees too thickly clustered together are pulled to one side and can go no further. Colon. The trees are too thickly clustered together. Okay. So that's given us some information. There's a pool of water. They have vehicles, they're no longer able to use them, and there's something in the water. So I'm thinking that the thing in the pool of water will be... Oh, they need to know why they're here. Rather than just, hey, you're at a spring. The track through the trees was where your superiors said it would be. And has brought you to the most likely place to find your quarry's trail. A water source. Far removed from civilization. There we go. So you know what? Let's just outright state. Core clue, alternative clue. Any character paying particular attention to the mud around the edge of the spring can clearly see the signs of a small wheelbarrow, a ridged tire track. Tire track is 2 words? I learned something new. With a trail of smudged footprints leading into what's the next thing on the abandoned outpost, leading into the trees nearby. This trail can be followed to the abandoned outpost. That's your core clue. So procedurals are the clue hunting scenes, and the way that Trinity Continuum deals with it is there's information that you're always going to get, a core clue. You cannot miss it. You just have to be in the right place to discover it. No roll required. So in this instance, anyone just looking at the mud is like, hey, that's a track. Because it's an intro game, you don't want people to have to think too hard about it to find the first clue. And alternative clues are those which give a bit of additional information. So in this instance, could be anyone, but in 33 words, I've got to be like, hey, definitely Nazis. Getting the metallic object requires a... It's difficulty 1 because it's not terribly difficult, but you still might miss it and lose it in the silt. I mean, aim could work. It's usually used with ranged weapons, but you know, that's a hand-eye coordination situation. See if there's anything more suitable. No, I'm going with aim and dexterity, I think. So, like, figure where to grab. Because, hey, I don't know if you know this, but water refracts things. And it's difficult sometimes to figure out where it is if you're trying to grab something underwater. Getting the metallic object requires a difficulty 1, aim plus dexterity roll. And... fails it to be a German coin. Failing the roll results in the object being lost in the silt. Because there's... I don't know, it always just seems pointless to me to say... Sorry. I like to include a suggestion of what failure actually looks like, rather than just saying, yeah, they failed. So having some narrative justification is generally useful. That puts me at 1 word to go. So let's see what editing I can do to bring that up to a nice round 200 words in this section. And yes, headings count towards that in my brain. Otherwise, you get to a weird number. The trek through the trees was where your superior said it would be and has brought you to the most likely place to find your quarry's trail, a water source far removed from civilization. The spring in front of you is large, judging by the churned mud at its edges, frequently used. The waters are cool and clear, and the sun high above glints off something small and metallic at the bottom of the pool. Characters are in a large clearing surrounded by lush vegetation on all sides. The vehicles they used to get here are pulled to one side and can go no further. The trees are too thickly clustered together. Any character paying attention to the mud around the edge of the spring can clearly see these signs of a small wheelbarrow, a ridge tire track with a trail of smushed footprints leading to the trees nearby. Let's specify that it's an old trail. Can be followed to the abandoned outpost. Alternative clue: getting the metallic object requires a difficulty 1, aim plus dexterity roll. It reveals it to be a German coin. Failing the roll results in the object being lost in the silt. I think that's good. We save. So this is a... I don't know how successful an approach this type of thing is, but a large part of my goal when writing community content is to provide... I don't know why that's hyphenated. That's going to be removed in editing. Yes, a large part of my goal when writing community content is to provide the material for story guides to take what I've written and go with it. You know, to write whatever they want to write, to tell the story, to build on what I've written. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm giving them the foundation to tell the story that they and their players want to tell. And sometimes that will be, you know, a relatively in-depth description of the scene, like with this whole section, chapter 1, the Zeppelin, where everything is pretty well described and the main points of the scene are touched upon, including some suggested dice rolls here and there to get things going. And then the other approach is, hey, here is a handful of vignettes, fully explaining, like, they're not scene worthy in their own right, but they're still important to the narrative. So here they are. What I'm trying to talk around without explicitly naming for some reason is this is a dungeon crawl-esque bit, and these are the dungeon chambers, if you are familiar with Dungeons & Dragons or any kind of modern fantasy game. These are just rooms in the forest for the players to encounter. Here's what's in the room. Here's what they learn from the room. Moving on. This scene is not designed to have combat in it. That is the next scene. So, doesn't need that. It's just, you know, here's a room. It's 10 by 10. It's got some chairs in it. And here's a clue about that will help you to continue. So, this vignette just tells them that they're on the right track. You know, here is a track. Alternative clue confirms it's the right track. The next one, whatever, and so forth. And then the final vignette is a 500-word encounter to lead into the Zeppelin. I can feel my blood sugar dropping, so I think I might end the stream a bit early. I have that power. No one can stop me. So that I can go and get a snack. I do also have a little bit of housework to do, and then after that I will very likely swing by my Twitch channel and do some streaming over there. But I just need to get my brain back into gear, and I'm still burned out, and I don't want to push myself too hard because I don't want to make things worse, hopefully, understandably. So, all of that being said, theoretically, the show is back on. With the major caveat that those of you who have seen it before know that I stream, I do it every 2 weeks. Next time the show would be on, I'm actually on holiday. So possibly the worst time to restart the show. However, in my defense, it was supposed to be on the 13th, but I was horrendously ill. Sebadez brains wander off all the time. Sometimes they come back. It's true. I need to corral it because, you know, I need it for the rest of the afternoon. So I should be back. You know, the show should be back for good, air quotes. But the next stream will actually be the 24th of February, all things being, you know, all things going well. Those of you watching on Twitch, if you've missed anything from the beginning of the show, and you are not a subscriber to to twitch.tv/@theonyxpath, you will, twitch.tv/theonyxpath, you will need to wait a week before the video, the VOD, the video on demand, goes live on the Twitch channel, at which point it will also be able to be viewed on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/@comradebubbles. If you are not subscribed on Twitch but have a Amazon Prime account, that's the word I'm looking for, you can link it to your Twitch account for a Prime Gaming account, and that gives you one free subscription a month. It's the same benefit for you and the channel as if it were a paid tier 1 subscription. It's just factors into the cost of your Amazon Prime. And that will obviously help the channel out. If you are subscribed to the channel, congratulations. Thank you very much. We really appreciate it. And shout out to Von Ether's 69-month streak. It's a very nice number. You can watch the show whenever. You don't have to wait a week because you have the right to. You can just watch it now on demand. I do also stream on Twitch, twitch.tv/ComradeBubbles. I will probably be there in about an hour, maybe a little less. I need to do some stuff and get my brain back under control. I don't stream tabletop content all that much, but I do like to think it's a chill, inclusive place to chat about stuff while I play video games. So please do swing by if you can. I'm always happy to talk about tabletop role-playing games. And hopefully we'll be back basically in a month's time. In 4 weeks' time, hopefully we'll be back. Hopefully have an idea about where to go with this scene and how to talk to people and stuff of that nature. But as ever, if at the top of the show, if you missed it, the best place to find what's happening with Onyx Path is the Monday meeting notes. That link is in the Twitch chat. There are no current crowdfunding campaigns. This is Onyx Path's 15th year of existence, which is fantastic. And if you are a fan of Twitch content, of video content, what have you, the other things on the channel, Thursday, 4 p.m. Eastern, Guiding the Path with Tom Moore. That's how to prepare, run, play, etc. StoryPath games. StoryPath Ultra games. Tom is a fantastic story guide, so you should check that out if you have any interest at all in the craft of story guiding, storytelling, games mastering, whatever you want to call it. And then Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern, Scion: The Veiled Society is a Scion actual play. I think that's everything from me for now. I'm just going to check my show notes to see if there's anything else I need to mention in the outro. I don't think there is. Nope. So, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate the support. Obviously, if you're watching this on YouTube, this does go up on my personal channel, but please also do subscribe to twitch.tv/@theonyxpath. I believe it's in the video description, where you can see all of the actual plays and content that happens on the Onyx Path Twitch channel. There's a wide variety of historical material, some of which I myself am in. And if you're watching this on my channel and are curious about writing content for tabletop RPGs, this is season 9 of the show. There's a lot of the show you can catch up on, and most of the material mentioned on the show is available for purchase on one of the various community content platforms, and it really does help me out if you buy it. Regardless, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate the support. It's a dark time out there, so my traditional greeting, not heard here for a long time, but please do stay safe, please do stay healthy, please do stay wholesome. Much love to you all. Goodbye.